Welcome to the Under 8 podcast, a daily college basketball show brought to you every weekday in under 8 minutes. At the time of recording, it is Tuesday. No, it is Monday. Monday, November 13th at 10:39 p.m. My name is Josh Mullenix. On today's pod, the Michigan Wolverines keep right on rolling at Madison Square Garden. The Gavitt Games are underway, and a Big Five Classic upset. It's all right here, right now on the Under 8 podcast. Scenario for you, Josh Doering. He is here with me at Joshua Doering 98 on Twitter. Scenario for you: if I dropped you on the planet tonight, you would think that the Michigan Wolverines have far and away the best backcourt in the country with one Doug McDaniel and one Nimari Burnett. It was 47 points. It was 16 of 29 shooting. It was lots of assists and not very many turnovers. It was quite the performance from the Wolverine backcourt at MSG.
Yeah, Nimari Burnett had his career high. I think it was 6 minutes left in the first half.
Something like that. It was his career high was 19 when he got to 19.
I think so.
Yeah.
And he didn't score that much after that, and kind of eased off the throttle the second half, and Doug McDaniel kind of took over. But to me, there are two things here from the St. John side. One of them is this Michigan backcourt that good, or is St. John's that bad defensively? Because that was atrocious. They could not stay in front of him. And then the other part of this is, and we can get to the Michigan side in a second, you have a team with a bunch of guards that got brought in, right? Joel Soriano's your big returner. So you've got these two highly thought of guards, Dennis Jenkins, Jordan Dingle, both buckets, not point guards, who got outscored combined by Burnett and McDaniel individually. Who is the playmaker for the St. John's team? Because they looked like a bunch of people that are score first players that didn't really move the ball very well. And I know they're, this is game 3 playing together, maybe even game 2, right? That they need time to figure this out. Rick Pitino needs time to work with this team. But there's just not a lot to build off of as a foundation here. Those are my two big concerns if I'm Pitino right now.
It looks like a team that hasn't been together for very long. It looks like a team of, and this is exactly why I hesitate. There's just a lot of mid-major production here that you're hoping can translate to the high major level, and it's something I'm always concerned about. And it's just a lot more difficult for someone like Jenkins in particular, who was the guy that brought the assist per game number that you might be looking for at 4.9 assists. It's just a lot harder against a Big Ten opponent like Michigan to be efficient from the field, hand out 4.9 assists, and find a way to score 15 points. And, Pitino, after kind of throwing his team under the bus a little bit, talking about how he was shocked how it kind of turned into a lot of one-on-one basketball and that there wasn't a ton of teamwork. And you kind of saw it on the floor. And that combined with the fact that, like you said, not totally sure if their defense is any good at all. They're 121st in defensive efficiency after the Michigan game. So it's clearly not good. And there's a lot to fix. And we're maybe above anything else learning that Rick Pitino is a really good basketball coach. He's not a miracle worker, and it's not going to turn into this well-oiled machine like it was at Louisville once upon a time overnight. It's just not.
Yeah. And that was game 2. So, they haven't, obviously, still plenty of time to continue to build this thing. I do think they're going to get significantly better. I haven't given up entirely, but We now know where we're starting from. And on the Michigan side, this team is really good. Curious to see just how good, but if that's the backcourt you're getting or something remote, if Doug McDaniel is that guy, forget about Amari Burnett. They're a very good team. If Burnett is now going to be the player that he always could be, that his recruiting profile coming out of high school suggests he was, they could be really good. And in a Big Ten that hasn't been too impressive so far, outside of Purdue, and you're talking about 3 teams in the rankings right now, an 18 at Michigan State, and I believe Illinois is 23rd. Now, Illinois got a chance against Marquette. We'll see how that goes. But the Big Ten could use another team pushing in the top 10, top 15. I would not be stunned if Michigan gets there.
I would not be stunned at all. I think we're pushing on how much longer until we start talking about them in the conversation with Michigan State and Purdue in the context of the Big Ten specifically. I have 2 questions for you when it comes to Michigan. One, Ewing theory, Juwan Howard. How do we is there what happens when he comes back? Because I mean, it's a little awkward how good they look without him around. It's almost awkward.
I'm not gonna read too much into that. To me, that's the reason why he hired Phil Martelli from the beginning, is that if something like this did happen, you're still very confident because you essentially have a second head coach running your program.
I'm not sure I agree with that, but you don't hire somebody so that when you have a medical emergency, they can run your program while you're gone.
Right. But that he wanted somebody with decades of head coaching experience on his bench to provide this kind of stability. And then if the situation arises, obviously Martelli is more than comfortable moving one seat over. I don't put any stock into that. To me, this is about this team just looks and fits much better. Sure. I would ask much more questions about the focal point that left than the coach who is still working his way back from the medical procedure.
Sure. Is Doug McDaniel the best point guard in the country based on the sample size of the last 10 days?
I'll buy most impressive so far.
Okay.
Need to see a little bit more before I say best in the country, but absolutely this is real. This is what he's going to be this season, and that's why I am 100% sold on Michigan.
I mean, I'm taking 2 point guards over Doug McDaniel right now. 2.
Tyler Kolek. Mahaney?
Who?
Ada Mahaney?
No. Not after you lose to Weber State. I'd still probably after the way that Tyson Walker can take over a game. That I think there's a conversation there, but Tyler Kolek is the only one that I am without thinking twice about it taking over Doug McDaniel right now.
I would agree with that.
That's not it. And when you put Michigan into conversation that they could have an All-American level guard, and Olivier Kamwa is a borderline All-American level big man
who did not have a particularly good game.
Not in this one, but that's okay. He didn't need to.
No,
this game wasn't particularly close.
No.
Then if that's what McDaniel is, and we know what Kamwa is capable of, then it can make some sense that Michigan looks as good as it does. And if Burnett's going to have 21 on 8 of 13 shooting, then we can take down the whole country.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The ceiling is there. The question is, how far can they push it?
89-73 Michigan rolls St. John's at MSG. Purdue 83-71 over Xavier in their first high major test of the season in the Gavitt Games. Zach Edey went from it's kind of quiet, he's got 18-7 to that's a big boy stat line. 28 points, 11 rebounds, 4 blocks, 9 of 17 shooting, 10 of 11 from the free throw line. Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer, both efficient. Both took care of the basketball and combined for 23 points. It was Xavier was, stuck in it. I thought it was very Xavier from the standpoint of it just kind of feels like with the injuries they've had that they don't quite have enough but they're well coached and they're going to be tough to play. I felt like that's kind of what you got from Xavier, but on the Purdue side, a pretty well-rounded effort led by a big stat line from Zach Edey.
Yeah. Guards were really, really good. Aggressive from the beginning. Really liked what I saw from both of them. Very confident, very in control, looking to make things happen. The other part of this on the Xavier side, outside the fact that Purdue is shooting the ball, I said this from the beginning. What happens if they actually shoot it? You add Miles Colvin. He could really shoot the basketball.
Well, we know what happens when they shoot it. We get the first half of last season. That's what they are when they shoot it.
Yeah. So far, that's what they're doing. Xavier, not so much. They entered the game 11 of 40 from 3 and then proceeded to go 7 of 25. So we're at 18 of 65 from 3 so far. And it's not like you have a lot of go-to weapons. And 2 of those threes were arguably Purdue's 2 best defensive possessions of the game. The Desmond Cloud somehow converted into 6 points. He's about the only guy that's going to be kind of your go-to scorer. He didn't have a good enough game for Xavier to give Purdue any real trouble. Like you said, they hung around longer than they probably should have and made it closer than it probably was, because I still didn't really understand how it was still a 10, 8, 12-point game. But ultimately, there was only one team that was going to win this one.
You can't ask Desmond Cloud to do more than 15 and 6 on 6 of 11 shooting. That's just not... Like, you probably need to in this current iteration of Xavier. That's the point.
Right.
And goes back to with the injuries, I'm not sure they have enough. But that's the upper echelon of what you'd like to have to ask Cloud to do. But
he's the one returner.
Right. No. It all makes perfect sense. But you're not going to get better than that from him. You're just not, at least not against a team like Purdue. So when they enter Big East play, especially, I'll be curious to see how this plays out, because they might just be a team all year that's they're going to make teams work for their wins, and they're going to play Marquette really hard, and they're going to play Creighton really hard. But maybe at the end of the day, there's a talent discrepancy that as long as they're not healthy, they can't quite get over that hump.
Yeah.
83-71, the Purdue Boilermakers moved to 3-0, and they look pretty good. They took care of business in their first 2 mid-major matchups, and like you said, for a lot of this game, it felt like, man, how is this still just an 8 to 10 point game? The unexpected outcome of the evening in the Big 5 Classic, by the way. Shouts to the Big 5 Classic. Not a great night for Villanova fans on the Big 5 Classic side of things. Number 21 Villanova falling to middle of the Ivy League Pennsylvania Quakers, 76-72. It might be panic time. This team doesn't do anything that Villanova teams we've come to learn and love over the last 10 years or so do. It's still only been a year and 2 games, 3 games, whatever it is for Cal Neptune, but you were hoping that with a healthy roster that has as much talent as it does, that we'd leave some of these outcomes in the past.
Yeah. Justin Moore was good. That's the positive.
Yep.
We'll start with that. Yeah, this was not a Justin Moore, wasn't their loss.
Which makes it almost even more discouraging.
Correct. Penn took 16 fewer shots, made 2 more than Villanova. That's the game right there. That's what happens when you shoot 34% from the floor and 27% from 3.
Yep.
And, Moore made a couple threes. Mark Armstrong got a couple steals so that they actually kind of had a chance to maybe make this interesting at the end. Ultimately, Penn did just enough to hold on. To me, this is kind of going to what you said. This is pretty simple. This is the second year in a row they've lost to another one of the Philly 5 teams. Maybe I'm missing one, I genuinely don't remember that happening under Jay Wright. I'm sure it probably did at some point. I'm sure it did earlier in his tenure before they became Villanova. But they would show up at these games almost without exception, every single season and win by 15 to 25 points. To your point about this just not right. They never, and these are games that are supposed to be difficult, rivalry. These are all the players that at least somewhere in there probably wish they were playing at Villanova instead, right? That Villanova didn't recruit. All kinds of reasons for this to happen more often, for these games to be more challenging, and they just weren't. And now this is 2 years in a row where you've lost to one of these teams. That says an awful lot. As much as I love this team and don't want to panic yet.
Yeah, it's I still like you look down the roster and it's still like, man, they have a lot of dudes. But the more that this keeps happening, and I mean, what we've really learned over the last 14 to 18 months is how crucial Jay Wright was. Like, we all knew, but now we really know. It's kind of like, it's like Peyton Manning should win MVP when the Colts go 1-15 when he's hurt, right? Or 2-14, whatever. But the point, like, the talent on this team is not that much less than the talent of like the 2021 team or the,
no,
it's just not. And they just don't do, and I texted you this earlier this evening, they just don't do any of the things that I'm expecting a Villanova team to do. They don't knock down shots. They don't share the basketball. They only had 6 team assists in this game on 22. No, there's a lot of like kind of just running into a defender and hoping to draw a foul. It's just this beautiful symphony of Villanova offense that we were so accustomed to for 10 years. It looks so different right now. I hope it's just a speed bump in what ends up being a super successful season for Villanova. I hope that, but this one is tough to swallow, and it's not like Penn just caught fire and it was like, oh my gosh, what are you going to do? There were a lot of things that made you scratch your head a little bit.
Yeah. Not feeling great about being really high on this team. Not giving up yet.
Sad. I'm so sad. I was so ready to be so in on Villanova because I was on board the bandwagon late last year about watch out for Villanova in the Big East tournament. Watch out. Like, that is not out of the question. And I thought they finished last year pretty strong as they got healthier. And I'm disappointed to be sitting here on November 13th and having this conversation about them.
Absolutely.
Anything else before we get out of here?
I'm good.
Beautiful. Tomorrow's a big night. Lots of really high-level basketball. Champions Classic, of course, the headline. And we'll be back here tomorrow night, late in the evening, to talk about it all. That's it for the Under 8 podcast for Monday, November 13th. It is 10:57 p.m. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to your shows. Follow the Under 8 pod on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. Thank you so much for being here, and we will see you tomorrow night.